Welcome everybody to today's workshop presentation on resumes and cover letters. My name is Lilian Barajas. I am the Associate Director of Viterbi Career Connections. Hopefully this presentation will help you in hopefully preparing your resume. I know many of you are preparing for our event next week. Who is going to our Engineering Career and Internship Expo? Yes, all of you should be raising your hands, hopefully. So by now, I hope that you have a good base for your resume, but I will be covering a few details here that will hopefully, help enhance it a little bit more. And we're going to talk a little bit about the cover letter, a little bit about tailoring your resume. We won't be able to get to activity, but we'll also talk to about action items and Q&A. Any questions that you have, during the presentation, I ask that you hold them, or we'll kind of go through some questions at the end for a cleaner recording. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, so a quick little data point here. About 40% of employers are more likely to look at applications where a candidate turns in a cover letter. So I actually subscribe to, this in terms of what I do when I go through the recruitment process for our own office. We hire interns in our office, and this is definitely something that I, really look at is the cover letter. Oftentimes students will ask the question, do I really need to turn in a cover letter? They answer yes. Err on the side of caution and, submit a cover letter unless the employer specifically tells you not to. And the reason behind it is, well, before I get into that, the reason behind it is, and I've heard this from some employers, that it's an easy way for them to weed out anyone that isn't going the extra mile for it, if you will. So they see it as, if you're turning in a cover letter for me, you must be really interested. And if you're turning in a tailored cover letter, we must be like at the top of your list, right? And so a tailored cover letter means not generic. Some of you may have a general or generic cover letter and resume, which is fine to have as a base, but really you should be tailoring your resumes and cover letters. And we'll talk a little bit about what that will look like. So let's talk a little bit about the cover letter. What are they and what they're kind of designed to do? But overall, they are supposed to accompany your application. A cover letter shouldn't be a regurgitation of your resume. The cover letter is really supposed to tell a story. Your resume really can't do that, right? Your resume is just a listing of work that you've done, projects that you've been involved in, publications, extracurricular activities, all those things. But you really can't tell your story. Whereas in a cover letter, you really can. It's that narrative, right? And so here is where you can tell the company why you're interested in working for them. Here is where you can tell the company what you're passionate about and why you would be a good fit for that company. So definitely, use it to your advantage. What I would say though is be intentional about making sure that your cover letter is done well, have it looked at, because another way that employers may use this, and I use it too, again, as I recruit for our office, I'm not an engineering employer, but recruit in a different sense. I look at it for a sample of your communication skills. So if you are making errors left and right on your cover letter, if your grammar is off, if you're not making sense, that's a reason for me to move on to the next applicant. So a little bit more on the cover letters and what you can, add in them. So just know that we do have some sample cover letters and resumes online. Before I jump into this, on our website, you may have already been in there. It's called the Viterbi Career Toolkit. And if you go to our website, viterbicareers.us.edu, you will be able to find it in there. And it details out, and I think there's a sample of cover letter. Usually there's about 3 paragraphs to a cover letter. The first one is the intro, it's basic information that is telling, the reader what you're applying for, why you're the best fit in a sentence or two. Maybe it tells them a little bit about like your background in terms of like your undergrad BS, major, those kinds of things. But the other things that you really can include in your cover letter include, how are you going to impact the bottom line? So you could talk about an accomplishment here that you may have, whether it's in an internship, whether it's in an academic project, whether that is in an extracurricular activity. How are you going to help them at all times? Remember, it's not what they can do for you, it's what you can do for them. Don't forget that. So when you're writing your resume and you're like, oh, I don't really want to tailor this. It's like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. So if you're not taking that extra step, what you're doing is making it harder for them to pick you. Why? Because they're trying to look through and scan to find the most, relevant information to them. And if they have to work hard to find it, guess what? You're not moving on, right, to that next part of the application process. So what you're trying to accomplish with both the cover letter and resume is make it as easy as possible for them to see you as a clear choice, right? So I started talking about this earlier, about what exactly you should include. And remember, this is being recorded, so you will have access to this and can review it again. It will be in the Victoria Career Gateway under the resources section. Usually in the cover letter, you'll have your basic contact information, but it doesn't have to look exactly like, the resume again. You may have some your phone number and other basic details, but again, it doesn't have to be exactly like the resume. Now, some of the things that I wanted to kind of go through here include, the introduction. Again, it's that first kind of paragraph where you really talk about like the position, why you're interested in it, and really trying to kind of set the tone, making a connection with the employer. Usually, again, it's that one or two sentences that really say, well, given my experience in X, Y, and Z, I know I would be a great fit for the opportunity. The first paragraph really starts to go into some more detail about your experiences. I would always encourage you to do maybe only 2, 3 max experiences, because then your cover letter starts to get lengthy. And again, remember, they're receiving many of these documents. Usually the cover letter may not be looked at immediately. What's you looked at immediately usually is the resume. And then the cover letter is secondary. Like if they're like, which candidate should I go with? And this is a great way for them to really kind of see who's a better fit, maybe perhaps. So the second paragraph really includes any additional details, including any specific projects that you done. You also focus on soft skills, any kind of leadership, that you can leadership examples that you can add in here are also great. Remember, they're not just hiring you for your technical skills, the engineering skills. They also want someone that has soft skills. And so keep that in mind as you're writing both the cover letter and the resume. Make sure you're including examples of that. I often see many resumes that look very technical and you're like, well, yes, I'm in a technical field. Well, yes, that's true. But so are 200 or 300 other students in your same major. And if someone else is going to include soft skills and you don't, who's going to stand out more? So keep that in mind. And then of course the closing is, how, what you can bring to the table. You're kind of wrapping it all up, why again, you're the best fit. This is sometimes either the second paragraph or the closing might be a place where you can put, why you want to work for the company, what you're passionate about. They like to see that information too. And if it's done really well, you can kind of see that passion come through in the cover letter. I have seen it myself in the past. with a few students that do a really great job with the cover letter is really getting me excited to meet with them. So I think we already covered this already. 10% of hiring managers wouldn't hire a candidate who didn't include a cover letter. Again, it's just another easy way for employers to, weed out, some of those students that aren't going that extra mile for them. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a cover letter and a resume, which we covered basics, which is, again, the cover letter is a way to tell your story. A resume is really going over some brief points about your skills and experiences. You don't really want to use first person in your resume, so you don't want to use I did this, we did that. Like it should just be, starting off your sentences with action verbs like designed, created, work around using those I's and we's. In the cover letter, that is different because again, you're telling your story, right? And in the cover letter, again, you're trying to make that connection with the employer. Whereas in the resume, you're looking more at showcasing the skills and experiences that you have. So now I want to jump into the resume a little bit more. We'll cover more on the resume just because I know many of you, want to get additional details on that specifically since we do have our career fair coming up next week. Some of the basics. Now, I don't want to go too into detail here because I'm assuming many of you have already started a resume. Can I have a show of hands of who has started a resume? Okay, so yes, the majority of you probably have already started a resume. So you probably already know the basics. So I'm not going to go into too many details here. I want to make sure that I cover information that the audience wants. But if there is someone that needs more clarification on any of these things, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I might just kind of move on to the next slide. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on was applicant tracking system. Who has heard of an applicant tracking system? Okay, a few of you. If, for the rest of you, this is important to know because what these are tools that our employers use to filter out candidates. So it's basically software, your resume. This is made a lot for the larger companies where they need some of that assistance. And so basically they submit all your resumes through there. And if you're not meeting the keyword search, you're not even making it to human eyes. So what can you do to, make it through? So really you want to make sure that you are paying attention to keywords. And what are keywords? Keywords are, things that you can find in a job description. That's where you're going to be able to find what is it that they're most interested in. And if it's not in your resume, then no, you are not going to make it through, right, to that, actual like recruiter. And so a great tool for you, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, is JobScan. So I think that's probably in the next couple of slides. No, I'll cover in the next couple of slides, but let me see if I can move this out of the way. So tailoring your resume, making sure that you're including some of these, details. That I've been saying tailoring a lot. I've been saying make it relevant. So these are a few key ways that you can do that. Matching the title exactly if you can. So in your cover letter, definitely make sure that you're including that. Preferred skills and experience. So again, looking at the job description is going to be key. It is harder, I will say, because I've seen some of the job descriptions when they provide a very generic job description and you're like, well, how do I tailor it? This isn't, that specific. And in that case, you're going to have to make the call, right? You're going to have to try to figure out, well, what type of company is this, right? Is it, more of like a communications company? Is it more of a software company? Look at, other job descriptions there and see if you can pull anything out. Otherwise, you might have to go with a little bit more of a generalized resume, but when at all possible, definitely make sure that you are including the preferred skills and experiences. So what that means is that if you have a section, in there that says work experience or that says projects, and you have 10 projects in there, that's not tailoring it. You need to pull out, extract the ones that do not matter to them and leave the ones that do. So that might mean you have some strong five projects in there. And even within that, you can tailor. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It means that you can reduce or increase the number of bullet points that you have for each one of those. So maybe one experience is really like the crown jewel of your resume, right? That you're like so proud of it. It's very relevant to what it is the employer wants. So maybe you're going to do 5 or 6 bullet points there because you really want to highlight that. Versus some of the other ones were okay, you know, there's some things you could pull out from there. Maybe you have leadership experience in some of those others. So maybe you include 2, 3 bullets. So don't be married to the idea that for your resume, you have to have a certain number of bullets. I tend to see that a lot with our student resumes where they're really focusing on that, and that's just not the case. I kind of already covered this too with cutting irrelevant information, getting a second opinion. If you haven't done so already, I hope that you get your resume looked at already. But ultimately, if you haven't had anyone look at it, first off, you want to make sure you're going to VMOC, which is our AI resume review software. If you go to our toolkit, again, I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, viterbicareers.usc.edu is our website. You can go into the toolkit section under resumes and find that software so you could sign in. USC Career Center actually does pay a subscription, so you guys can access that for free. And of course, JobScan is what I spoke about earlier. That is not a resource that our office has or the main Career Center. That is actually, you know, a public website, but we've heard good things about it. So with that, I wanted to kind of show you what exactly, you know, these look like. So how many of you have already used VMOC? Okay, the majority of you have, great. So I'm, again, not going to go too much into detail, but basically you upload your resume here and it's going to give you a score. The goal is to have a score of 80% or more. If you are above an 80%, you are good. You really could just be ready to turn into an employer at that point. If you're below that, definitely want to come and see us. We do have drop-in hours Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, except for next week, since we do have our event. We will not have those available next week. So just know that 80% is the goal. However, know also that this is a software. It is not a person. So sometimes it will say things that don't make sense. You're like, but this doesn't make sense. This is fine. And I've had students that come in and have a 60 or 65%. And I'm like, you're fine. Don't worry about it. But they're really stuck on the fact like the score, it's not high enough. So in some cases, it doesn't make sense, the advice that it's giving you. So, again, that's kind of what we're here for, to kind of continue to give you that feedback. So this is the job scan. So what happens in job scan is you basically have to upload a job description and your resume. And then it's going to tell you how much of a match you are. So this one shows you're kind of missing some stuff. And it really tells you kind of what, it is, that you might be missing, whether it's skills. So it's probably pulling those key details from the job description in order to kind of get this. So I'm not as familiar with JobScan. It's not a tool or resource that our office manages. Just know that there are a few free uploads, but after a certain point, they do charge. So if it's worth it to you, you're welcome to do that. But, if you can, try to get under the number that is free so you don't have to pay. But these are some of the findings of what it looks for, like, are you an education match, like the section headings, the file type, skills and keywords. So it's already telling you there, missing one important high value skill. Also touches on some hard skills as well, and really kind of tells you there. It pulls probably, if the job description is telling you they're really looking for someone with good communication skills. They're really looking for someone with good communication skills. And I've seen it before where they spread it within the job description, then you better have examples of your communication skills. Otherwise, again, you're not making that match. The soft skills. So it really does go into detail. So a really useful tool if you're interested in going a little further. Maybe you don't do this for every employer, but maybe it's like those companies that you're like, I really want a job with them. maybe use that for this. All right, so a few tips, and I want to try to finish up because a majority of the time I'd like to spend on your questions. That's oftentimes where our students, have that. Really just want to manage your expectations in terms of the number of jobs that you're applying to. I've had students that come into the office and say, well, I've been applying to so many jobs. I have 50 jobs, 100 jobs, like literally there's some students that will say they've applied to 100 jobs and I haven't heard back. Chances are, if you haven't heard back for an interview, there's something wrong with your resume. You're not tailoring it. And so if you make a few of the fixes, that we kind of discussed, I definitely think that you can then be pulled into the interview process. Now, if you're getting interviews, but you're not making through to the final rounds, there's something going on in the interview. And then you guys can set up appointments with us doing mock interviews. So in terms of a number, there's not a set number, right, that you should be applying to. But obviously, if you only apply to 2 jobs, your chances, right, of actually getting the interview are less. So there should be a healthy balance, right, between, a good, healthy number and you're overdoing it. Spend your time wisely. Because I think applying to 100 jobs and not tailoring anything is not spending time wisely. Tailoring to maybe 30 jobs, it's going to take you a little bit more time, but I think you're going to get more return on your investment that way. Goal setting. I definitely always encourage our students, as they come in for advising, to set up some SMART goals. Because a goal isn't, I want to get an internship next summer. So how are you going to get that internship next summer? What are the steps that you're going to take to get that internship next summer? And so making these goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound will really help you attain those goals. So I will apply to 5 jobs by this Sunday. So you're saying, you're giving a number, right? 5 jobs, and you're giving a deadline, the day of the week, right? Sunday. So that way it's more likely that you will accomplish the goal. And then lastly, here in this area, mindfulness. I definitely can feel you all. I've been through the job search process before. It is not an easy one. It requires patience. It can take a toll. It's hard. It's competitive. You have a lot going on too with school, trying to make sure that you're obviously doing well here, because at the end of the day, you want to graduate, right? You want to get the degree. That's why you're here. So you really have to try to find a balance, with all the things that you have. I'm glad that you guys are here because you're making this a priority. You're making this important, right? Your job search process or internship search process. And so dedicate a little bit of time, during every week. At this point, if you want an internship next summer or a full-time job, you should really be dedicating, every single week a few hours of your time to the process, because the worst thing that you would want to do is wait till March, come to our office and say, I didn't have a chance to do anything. I was really busy with school. At that point, it's very difficult. Not to say that you wouldn't be able to find anything, but it's harder because there's less opportunities. One figure that I didn't have up here, I usually have it in another presentation, is 70% of recruitment happens in the fall. That's now. September and October are the busiest times of the whole entire academic year. We do have employers return in the spring, but not as many as right now. One more thing on mindfulness, there are many, many services available to our USC students. Make sure you take advantage. There's an app, Mindfulness USC. We actually have a new director of wellness here within Viterbi. We are definitely prioritizing it because we know that there's a lot going on, in everyone's lives, right? And you're trying to manage the personal, the professional, the student, so definitely make sure you're taking advantage of the services that ultimately you're paying for. All these services are things that you're paying for. All right, so some action items. If you haven't done so already, upload your resume to BMOC to kind of get some, feedback, immediate feedback. You don't have to wait for anybody. Upload your resume to JobScan if you'd like. And then, draft a cover letter and utilize the cover letter checklist that again is available on our website. Let me see if this is hyperlinked. You could kind of see it down at the very bottom. It is very small, viterbicareers.usc.edu/toolkit-resume is where you can find some of this information. So with that, oh good, exactly 30 minutes. I wanted to make sure I leave plenty of time for some questions. So I'm going to try to toggle back and forth between our online students and our in-person students. So I ask for your patience as I kind of go through this. Let me grab a drink of water. All right, so students in the chat, feel free to put questions in there. And I'm going to go back and forth between in-person and online, and I will try to repeat the question so that you guys can hear. Yes, gentleman right here.
So I have one question about the resume. So when we try to put down the project experience or research experience or internship experience on our resume, so should the experience be in our experiences or experience?
So we're on the title, you mean?
Yeah, on the title.
I would say you could just leave singular, like work experience.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Just to make sure, since I have seen both versions.
Yeah, I usually see the singular more, like work experience, project experience, academic projects. Like I usually see the singular.
Yeah, but for project, it will be projects.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's why it's confusing.
And you're right. It is confusing a little bit. Other questions? I'll do 2 and 2. All right, right in the back.
And BMOC, we get only 10 attempts, right? So if you want more, do we have to request or?
So the question is in BMOC, you only get 10 attempts. That's correct. So that system is actually run by the main USC Career Center. And that is set because you really shouldn't need more than 10. The goal is that after you get edits from BMOC, you should be making those edits. Not just make a tiny little edit, put it back in, tiny little edit, put it back in. There should be really no reason why you would go past the 10. So use them wisely. You look at the number of 10, okay, 5 a semester, you should be good.
So what if we change our resume a lot and then again want to try?
Well, the thing is, when you tailor your resume, you really shouldn't need to do VMOC again because you've received the main comments from VMOC about whether it's structure, grammar, things like that. And that will translate, if you fix those and you translate that over to your other edit or other tailored resumes, you really shouldn't have to put it back into VMOC. I would use those sparingly. All right, I'm going to go to online. Oops, sorry, I might have to stop share so that, oh God, I don't have a screen here, so I might have to actually just look at everyone's here, so apologies. Let's see, if you don't have any related work experience, will writing a cover letter improve the likelihood of getting an interview? If you don't have any related work experience, will writing a cover letter improve the likelihood of getting an interview? I think that writing a cover letter can definitely improve your chances. You never know who you're going to get on the other end as far as what the employer cares about. This process can be very subjective. Resumes are subjective, cover letters are subjective. I can tell you one thing, you can see another colleague of mine and they might have a slightly different take on things. Like one of my colleagues, for example, is our employer relations person. So when she advises, she brings in that lens when she advises our students. Someone at the main career center has a different lens. So you might have slightly different, information that you're receiving, which is confusing, I know. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that the basic information is there, the structure is there, you have strong bullet points, and in the end, make it your own. So I do think that writing a cover letter would make you a stronger candidate. Can I tell you that it will 100% get you an interview? No. All right. Will the slides or recordings be shared? Yes, I mentioned I'm recording this, so you are able to view them on Viterbi Career Gateway in the resources section. If we do not know who the recruiting person is, who do we address? Oh, I'm assuming this is probably for the cover letter. I've seen dear hiring manager, dear recruitment team. So you can address it generally, because I know most of the time you don't get that information, and that's understandable. All right, I'm gonna now take some in-person. Yes, Megan.
I've heard different like takes on it, but in how much detail do we want to go into like about our experience with like projects and the skills we gained from it? Because I've heard that you don't want to go into too many details about like the projects and the work you've done just because you want to answer that in the interview part.
Yes and no. You need to include enough detail so that can at least spark like interest. So especially if it's something that's relevant, have a relevant project or internship, don't take up a whole half page on it, because you also have to be mindful of some of the other things that you have done and want to include to make you a well-balanced candidate, again, to focus on the soft skills and the technical. But so, I know this is vague, include enough detail to make sure that they recognize the fit, but not taking up half the page. Like really none of your experiences should take that up. I have seen 6 bullets at one point in some to get it, because it is really relevant to that experience and you should be including that. So it's kind of a balance. There's no particular, I guess, length I could tell you that you would include. What I would recommend to students is create a master resume, or I call skeleton resume sometimes, where it ends up being a page, 2 pages. Include everything. Include all of your work, not from high school at this point. You shouldn't really have any high school information unless you're a freshman. At this point, it should really be bachelor's, master's, and then you have a 2-page resume. Maybe it's 3-page, but make sure that you update it with all these things that we talked about, and make sure that it's been looked at. And now you have this base, a really good base. And then now you're going to look at the job description and then cut out information. At that point, it's just an editing job. Save as job A, save as job B, save as job C from that 3-pager. All right, another in-person, back.
So according to email, we're supposed to add like a involvement part, like
Yes.
a volunteership or something. Is it as important? Because sometimes it takes a lot of space and we have to reduce things that we write for the project.
Yeah. So here's what I will say, and this is not a direct quote or comment, but I remember it always because it's so important. An employer once told me, I look for how students apply what they learn in the classroom outside of the classroom. So they put emphasis on this because we're all taking, well, not all of you, but in your respective majors, you're taking very similar classes, doing similar projects. At the end of the day, and put only that in your resume, you're all going to look the same on paper. So how do you stand out? And oftentimes it's through extracurricular activities. So are you doing a bot build? Are you doing a hackathon? Are you doing a concrete? And there's so many things that I see out there that you guys can get involved in. Even outside of those projects, I've seen students do self-initiated projects. If that sounds familiar to you, where you're like, I just did this on my own for the love of learning because I wanted to have fun with my parent. I had a student who built, I think it was like a robot car or something with their parent. And that is something you can include on there, and that's valuable. That tells me you take initiative. That tells me you like to learn, and in your field, like what a great, I think experience to have on there. So yes, I would say extracurriculars is important to highlight these things, the soft skills that they're looking for, as I talked about, like the leadership, the communication, the teamwork. If you're not covering that in your projects or internships, then that needs to be in the extracurriculars.
As a follow-up to that, I mean, say we have like a project that we also submitted to like a competition or contest. So do we also include the contest as an involvement, or do we just keep it inside the project?
A competition can be listed under extracurricular activities.
So while also mentioning that we did the same project inside the project.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that part. So it was part of a project.
Yeah, it's a major project, but we also submitted to a competition and sort of, I guess, maybe
But
got
is
something out
the
of it.
project academic or is it?
No, it's extracurricular.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You put it in your project section, but you're wondering if you should also put it in an extracurricular section.
But I have a project in my project section, but I
Yeah.
can't exactly say that I also.
Well,
got
it's
something
kind
out
of being repetitive, or I think it's not making the best use of your space because you are putting it in two places. And I guess my question is, do you have more information on your extracurricular activities? If you don't, then maybe don't include extracurricular activities, but you really highlight it in your project section so that there's keywords there that they could still pull that focus on that. Okay, I'm gonna move on to another question. Let's see, can you in any way help me review my cover? So for any reviews of documents, you are welcome to come into drop-ins. I know that we've been a little busy. If you come into our drop-ins Mondays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays, it's definitely been, and usually it is this way around our career fair. That is the way that you would be able to get your resume reviewed or a cover letter reviewed. Appointments are not available for resume or cover letter review. If we did that, imagine no one else would get any other questions answered because they would all be taken for resumes and cover letters. So just know, like, because some students are, well, why can't I find appointments for a resume? That's because they're not available. Those are just done through drop-ins and resume. We do have our last session today from 2 to 5 of drop-ins before the end of the week. We don't have drop-ins tomorrow, and we do not have drop-ins next week, given the fact that we are literally running these events. So we will not be available, but know that we're available today. If you don't get seen by us, the main career center is still here to help you. So I want to answer this other student's question who's been holding his hand for some time. Yui King, feel free to unmute yourself or put your question in the chat. Yui Ken? Let's see. What is the address? Can you specify in terms of this here? What's the address? I'm not sure what that refers to. Oh, our address for our office is Ronald Tudor Hall 218. Just know that you can actually go, you don't even have to come into the office to get on the wait list. If you go to our website, again, viterbicareers.usc.edu, and go to the advising section, there is a widget in there that opens up at about 1:55. You can add yourself on there, and then our staff will take people in the order received. You can do it in person or online. It's up to you, but in person, it would be Ronald Tudor Hall 218. All right, Tana Poll. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Tana Poll? Okay, if you're not there, I'm going to turn it over to questions in person. It sounds like I am. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Maybe I can do this. See if you can unmute yourself now, or
Yes, thank you very much.
yes.
Yeah. So I've been like job search for a little bit from like the career fair and on the website. On some company that I want to have an internship with, they are not posting an internship yet. What are your suggestions? Should I wait until them posting, or should I just like apply to somewhere else?
You can definitely look through Viterbi Career Gateway to see if they are posting in there. I'm not sure exactly where you're looking on their website, you said?
Yes, so I'm looking for Ford and Tesla, and I cannot find their summer internships.
So yeah,
And
if they
I
are,
don't think like our university have their job on the gateway too.
So if it's not on Viterbi Career Gateway, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not hiring. It just means that they may not be posting necessarily through our office. But if you go to their website and they don't have anything, well, then that is the case. You might want to check back often. You could also look on LinkedIn, go to Tesla's maybe social media feeds. Sometimes companies will have, like I know for Twitter, I've seen some companies have like a company Twitter, and then they have a company careers Twitter. They'll put their activity like, hey, I'm going to be on campus, Trojans, make sure to meet me at so-and-so place. So you can definitely still look and keep looking, because what's in the systems one day might change immediately the second day. So that would be my suggestion there.
And I have another follow-up question. So now I feel like I want to work in like automotive industry, but I try to look for internship and jobs, and like there's not a lot available. I feel like that, like someone suggests that I should apply for like 100 job or interview, but there's not like 100 car companies, something like that. Should I like just looking for anything else to apply for, like to meet the 100 job application, or what is your recommendation on that?
So it sounds like you would benefit from a career advising session because this is very specific to you. So I would encourage you to go onto Viterbi Career Gateway to set up an appointment with an advisor. Just know that our appointments are pretty filled too. So again, we ask for your patience. We only put out appointments 2 weeks out, meaning like you're not going to see an appointment in there from like to the end of October. Like it's only 2 weeks out. So just check every day, because obviously the system is just letting 2 weeks out ahead. And then that way, hopefully you can get seen and kind of go over a strategy to talk about that. Okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm going
Thank you very much.
to any of the students online, does anyone else have any questions? All right, it doesn't look like it, but let me double check. Oh, yes. As an international student, can I use OPT CPT to apply for the internship to those companies who doesn't provide sponsorship? That is a really great question. And the answer to that is no. Because typically, and you'll see this on Viterbi Career Gateway, when you fill out your profile, there's two options. Yes, now or in the future we'll need visa sponsorship, or no, now or in the future we'll need visas, does not require visa sponsorship. And so for our employers, you know, many of them cannot hire international students, you know, because of whatever reasons they have, like contracts, government contracts, things like that. And so I would encourage you to really focus your time and attention to those jobs where you do qualify for. And I think last I looked, even at our career fair, almost like half of the employers coming are hiring our international students. There's a really great resource actually that the main career center does pay for. I give them credit because it isn't us, it's them. It's called Interstride. So if you go to their website, careers.usc.edu, I think it might be certain, I forgot the section it is, but look for search Interstride on their website and something should pop up. So that way you can also have additional resources for yourself in case, you know, you find that maybe there's some companies, not specifically that, you know, are, you know, found, you know, through our site. You're welcome to also do that as well. Yeah, so the booking of the appointments I mentioned earlier, we are pretty booked and we book out 2 weeks in advance. And so it might mean that we don't have anything available to in the next couple of weeks. And so if an alternative is going to the main career center or coming in for drop-ins as well. All right, so I have time for one more question from in person since I just answered some online stuff. One more question from in person.
Do employers like go through your cover letter with you, like during the interview, like a resume? Like,
No, we don't have reviews through that employers do cover letter review. We had resume review. I don't know if you participated in that last week for our How to Get Hired series where employers came to review resumes, but that we've never done a cover letter.
I mean, like during the interview, like they look at your resume, they'll have a printout of your resume, and then but do they also take a printout of your cover letter and talk about it?
You can bring it with you, but I doubt they'll look at that. I think mostly the time they're looking at the resume. Like again, and I would still add it to your application. Don't take that as a no. I still encourage it because I'm telling you, my system for hiring is I look at my pool. First, I look at all the people that turn in a cover letter. If they didn't turn one in, I don't look at them. Then I look at the ones that did submit a cover letter. And then I go click in really quick. And I could tell really quick because once you do it so much, I scan them. And that's what our employers do. I click in really quick and I see who did it to me. And then it's easy to see because you even putting my name and the office name. Okay, this isn't generic. Cool. I'm going to see them a little later. I'll look at this pool. That I'll look at the actual cover letter a little bit more in detail. So that's kind of my process of like, and then the second tier is I look at the ones that submitted a cover letter, but it is generic. And then lastly, I do look at the resumes if I have, it's like a last resort. That's my process. But again, everyone is different in terms of that. All right.
Some of the online application portals, they don't even have like a cover letter submission.
Yeah, some of them don't have it. And then in those cases, then, well, there's nothing to do, right? Like if they don't have it, to me, that tells me they don't need it. Unless they sometimes have a text box, which is kind of annoying, but you know, sometimes you have to copy paste it in there, put that in there. Maybe it's an email and in your little cover letter in there. So it just depends on the way that the employer wants your application. So go with the flow, read instructions. Please read instructions, guys. That's one thing too. If I'm telling you something in the application, and that was another reason I filter out people, is like, if I tell you I need your work all semester and you don't give it to me, I'm like, well, you're not paying attention to details, so I'm not going to look at you. You know, there's these little things that really, you know, end up mattering in the process because when you get so many applications, you know, you really have to pay attention to those things to try to get the best candidate. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I am going to now end this recording. Again, the recording will be available